Yaka Yuru, Yaka Marabai, Yaka Billa. Thank you very much, everybody. To those of you who have tuned into Sydney, Australia to watch this live broadcast from the Sydney Recital Hall. I'd like to acknowledge my aunties and uncles and my relatives all in Mount Isa and my friends. Sitting on the lawn in front of the Civic Centre, Tony McGrady, the Mayor of Mount Isa, and of course the Kalkadunga Nation and the Kalkadunga organisation for helping us achieve this goal tonight of this very unique performance of blending, one of Australia's oldest cultures to the world of classical music. I come from Mount Isa originally. I grew up there. I learnt the didgeridoo in Mount Isa from my uncle, Uncle Arthur Peterson. He was a great storyteller and a great communicator. And what I loved about learning the didgeridoo or listening to the didgeridoo being played by my elders was that, they took you on a journey. And now it's our time as musicians of the next generation to take you on a journey. I still remember the times fondly going out bush with my father, the late Alfred Barton, who's buried out on Carlton Hill Station, and cutting down branches of trees for the didgeridoo and playing in the natural amphitheatres and the beauty of the Selwyn and Argula ranges in the surrounding areas. The language component that you hear me sing at the top of the work is in my own language, Kalkadunga, and it's about the passing of the culture from one generation to the next. I wrote this song when I was 15 years old as a dedication to my people. It's very important to be a musician in this day and age, to be a communicator. Music is a vital part of society, and therefore we are the future champions of connecting Australia to the world.
This is my first time of working with the musicians from the Australian Youth Orchestra, and for me that's really exciting. I love working with this next generation of players. They're brilliant, and just being in the company of that really youthful, vibrant energy is very inspiring. And people at the start of their careers who are still hungry for experience and hyper alert and really switched on is very, it gives you a whole lot of energy, and it's a beautiful thing to be in the presence of. So that's a wonderful thing. And I'm also really excited about playing this piece because it's one that was written for me quite some years ago for me to play with the Australian Chamber Orchestra. It's been quiet in my repertoire for the last nearly 7 years. So coming back to it and discovering it again is really wonderful. And also for me, giving these young musicians the chance to meet Ekisven's music and to have a little glimpse of Estonia and that sound world is also really exciting. What you will have seen and heard in the piece that I've just played was that I used a whole range of different instruments, right through from the little tiny sopranino that just fits in my hands through to this bass recorder. And each instrument has a different colour and a different character, as well as, of course, a different range. So the little ones are higher and the bigger ones are much lower. And I had a great pleasure of working with Ekisven Tour when we were making this piece, when he was writing this piece. So I spent time with him, sort of introducing him to these instruments, because I love them dearly. I spend a lot of time with them, and I feel like each one has a different character and a different voice. So it was great fun showing him all the things that I thought that they liked to do, and the things that were hard for them, and the things that I thought were really idiosyncratic for the particular instrument and its colours. And then the thing that was very exciting for me was he asked me to do a whole lot of things that I'd never thought of doing on my instruments. And for me, that's one of the greatest joys of working with a composer, is that they take your imagination and your technique and your whole world into different places that you wouldn't have discovered without them. So we had a fantastic exchange, and then he went off and wrote this extraordinary piece, and it landed in my mailbox, and yeah, it's been a great companion and friend of mine since.
This orchestra is the best of both worlds, in that it's a youth orchestra, and what that brings is a commitment to the music from every member of the orchestra, but also the players in the orchestra have a little bit more experience. They're the next generation of Australian youth orchestra, so they bring with them their experience up to now, but at the same time bringing with them a commitment that you only usually find in a youth orchestra.
It's quite exciting for us because it's the relaunch of a kind of postgraduate AYO camerata, if you like, a chamber orchestra. And what we have here is mainly postgraduate people and people who've been through the AYO system. Some of them are too old to attend the other programs that they run. It's definitely a very clear pathway, this ensemble, to the profession. A lot of the people in this room are already working professionally as casuals in the symphony orchestras around Australia, and professional string quartet engagements and chamber music engagements, and it's extremely exciting and a great honour to be working with them. Excellent.
The quality of this group is defined by our sectionals at the beginning of the week, where we actually get to communicate with each other closely as strings, and we actually have a mentor who guides us very specifically throughout the program.
My role here today is to galvanise the string section, particularly in matters of sound. So they're all very good players, but what we have to do is find a blend of sound and an aggregate sound so that they're functioning as a section. And the way we do that is to obviously talk about it, talk about what part of the bow we're in, what kind of consonant of articulation they begin the notes with, how much bow speed. And so it's the wonderful thing about a wonderful string section is the homogeneity of technical approach, the physical approach. And also we're talking a bit about phrasing, which is a bit naughty of me because I'm not the conductor, but I find that it's the fastest way to get people to play together. Ensembles very usually solved problems of ensemble by giving them a commonality of phrasing, a common concept of phrasing, and then the rhythmic aspects and the gestures seem to just fall into place. I try to ask them to listen to the far corner of the room so that they can get the melange of sound rather than any individual perspective, and that often fixes the balance as well.
Wind sectionals were really useful this week. Even though this is a symphony, a lot of sections are very chamber-like, especially within the wind section. So it was beneficial to play with each other without having the strings there, to really learn where the lines fit together. And it makes it a lot easier then when we come together in the tutti rehearsal to make sure that we're fitting together and then blending with the strings as well. Having SSO tutors this week was really beneficial. They obviously know the repertoire very well and were able to guide us in our preparation for the performances. Wind players face the challenge of transitioning between playing with the whole orchestra, so playing their tutti sections, and then coming out of that texture and having to play solo lines. And it requires control, change of tone, change of dynamic, so that you make yourself known to the audience at the right point in time.
Playing first oboe can be quite challenging. In general, it is a very enjoyable thing to do. There are many solos to be played, and that is always welcome. It's always rewarding to be able to contribute and have such a significant role to the orchestra. The only side effect to that, though, the slight drawback, is that everything you play can be heard exactly. So oboists have to play with a fairly high level of accuracy. And in fact, to make things even more difficult for oboe players, we have to depend on these little delicate reeds. And what makes them so tricky and intricate is that, firstly, we make them ourselves. Every piece of cane that you make a reed out of is different. And not only that, but a single piece of cane, depending on how long you've played on it, can vary a lot. So not only do you want to make the best possible reed you can, but you also want to not play in it too much, not play in it too little before a concert in order to make the best sound you possibly can. However, I know that if I have a good reed, I know I'm going to do well.
It's good having a brother in the orchestra. It's nice travelling together everywhere. Good to see him growing up, because living together, and I lived away from home for a few years as well, studying, and it's good to see him coming along and developing a career alongside me. We've tried to play chamber music together before. It's kind of ended badly a few times. Just brotherly love, I guess. It's probably the best way to put it. I know we're both growing up a bit now, so it's probably time for us to have another try at things. Getting to the point we can work together a bit better and put sibling rivalry aside.
If you put my brother and I in the same string quartet, then I suppose the following would happen. We might have arguments and, of course, differing opinions on almost every single piece of material, but in the end, I think we'd create something very good.
My mum has never had formal music training, but has taught herself guitar and piano a bit, but never had the opportunities that we have had. She's been fantastic in helping us out, driving us places, flying us places, and has always been there to support us.
I'm originally from a little town called Wingelow in the Southern Highlands, which is about 2 hours south of Sydney. Not a great deal of people there, about 400, so learning violin and viola there was not always the biggest craze in the town, you could say. I used to catch the train up to Sydney every week for lessons, so that was usually about a 6-hour return trip. I'd catch the 5:25 a.m. train up, so it was a pretty long day, but ultimately, it's all the hard work's paying off. Quite often people ask me about my viola and why it's shaped differently. It's a little bit different, as you can see. The shoulders are very different, they're cut away, and the bass is quite wider as well. So the shoulder cutaway basically is to make viola playing a little bit easier for us, because it is a bit awkward sometimes trying to shift up onto the instrument. So without the shoulder there, it just makes you can go straight there without having to bring your arm around at any ridiculous angles. And then to make up for that, the bass down the bottom is much wider to make sure no sound quality is lost or anything like that. And yeah, I love this instrument. It makes life very easy and very simple to play, and orchestral playing much more enjoyable.
The sound world that we're going for is something really quite direct and immediate. We've got some great classical timpani that Joel's playing, which have an immediacy, a real character, slightly smaller in proportions, and what it does is really drive the drama of the music with its incision.
The timpani I'm playing for this Beethoven program with AYO are these beautiful Baroque drums that we've hired especially, and they're a little different in a few ways to the contemporary drums that I might use for other programs. As you can see, the bowls are a lot smaller than usual, as are the heads, and they're lapped with these calf skins, which have much more direct and sonorous sound, I find, to plastic heads that we might otherwise use. They're such a joy to actually play. You can really get a lot of different colors and a lot of focus and directness in the sound, which just really suits the style of Beethoven's music and this smaller sized orchestra that we're playing with. Okay, they also have this interesting tuning mechanism. Instead of pedals, which modern drums use, these keys attach directly to this gear mechanism, and there's a chain with teeth on it which runs around the whole circumference of the drum. So if you turn the key, it turns all the lugs in the same way, so you get even tuning around the drum.
After interval, we're playing Beethoven 3. The third movement, in the trio, it's a horn excerpt. And the second horn part especially is often put on a lot of low horn auditions because it has double tonguing, which is quite hard to cut through the horn sound. And luckily I get to play the second horn part, which is really exciting. The excerpt itself is quite tricky because in the end of the second phrase we all end on B flats in different registers, and sometimes that can be a bit of an intonation nightmare when you get there. But nevertheless, we're looking forward to it. It's a real horn moment. It's probably the biggest horn moment in the entire symphony for us. And so when it gets there, we're all really excited. I can't wait to play it, and I'm really privileged to play this symphony and to play this part because now I know that when I go and do an audition, I know that I can perform it under pressure.
This is the first time many of these young musicians have performed Beethoven's Eroica Symphony. So what you're going to get is an engaging, youthful, no-holds-barred approach to this extraordinary symphony. Strap in and enjoy the ride.